In this Import-Export TV special episode, we cover the recent Trade for Sustainable Development 2021 Forum, which recently took place in Geneva.
Bringing you interviews and special reports directly from the two-day event, we explore how sustainability may look like post-COVID times.
Organised by the International Trade Centre in conjunction with the World Trade Organization Public Forum, the hybrid event includes a wide range of stakeholders from the trade and development community, small business owners, government officials, policymakers and changemakers.
Our first guest is Sebastian Herold, Deputy Head of Sustainable Textile Chains and Sustainable Consumption with the German Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development. Here's what he's got to say about sustainable textile supply chains. So, welcome Sebastian. Thanks so much for joining us to talk about the whole T4SD Forum 2021. So, delighted to have you on today's show. Sebastian, can I ask you, what are the main areas of focus to improve sustainability and ethics across global textile supply chains?
Thanks, Lawrence, for asking the questions, for having me. I think transparency is key, certainly within supply chains. It's also key for more cooperation in supply chain. It's not only about having more information regarding consumers, but it's much more a basis for cooperation between companies and suppliers, which I think should be fostered. The second point is making due diligence mandatory. I think we need common rules and common understanding of responsibility of companies for human rights in supply chains. And we think that UN guiding principles for business and human rights could serve as a basis and as a definition for responsibility. And the third and last point I'd like to make is post-use and circularity. I mean, it's within the textile, it's the unsolved question. And I think we need to find ways to make circularity within textile chains the norm. It's still a long way, but I think that's the third and last point I would make.
Very valid points. Thank you, Sebastian.
Great, thank you. Now, Sebastian, is there a greater focus by fashion and textile consumers on the need for transparency of the products that they purchase?
Well, I mean, you're asking from Australia, so you're going to get a response from Germany and with the focus from Europe. So we had a public survey in last year from KPMG, consumer barometer, that says like 69% of consumers are willing to pay more for sustainable products, but only half of them are unsure regarding how sustainable products really are. So there's like, on the one hand, that's the willingness to really pay more, which is, I think, a great sign for sustainability. But on the other hand, there's a great need for orientation. That's what we find in the field. So, let's give you an example of how we are trying to solve it within the German government regarding textiles. In 2016, we came up with Siegelklarheit. It's literally translated. It's label clarity. It's a platform to compare different labels for consumers. But click rates were good, okay, but not very high. It is a tool for people who really know a little bit about or who want to get more informed, but it's not a tool that really gives you clear guidance. So in 2019, 2 years ago, we initiated the so-called Green Button. It's a state-owned label for sustainable textiles. It's a meta label, so we kind of based on other existing labels already. And we feel that works much better because it gives orientation, and you don't need to know so much from the consumer side to know this is kind of sustainable. And I think that's the difference between transparency, which is key for a lot of within the supply chain. But I think for consumer, it's much more the question of orientation than of transparency, because a lot of consumers wouldn't be able to really digest all the information that are there.
Yeah, very true. I think that's true. When consumers are very much overwhelmed with the buying decisions anyway, so that orientation piece is probably a more relevant discussion and an easier one for them to actually absorb. Mm. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Sebastian. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show, and best of luck with the T4SD Forum. Looking forward to really seeing all the great presentations and wonderful speakers as part of the event. So thanks so much for joining us all the way from overseas in Germany, and we look forward to speaking again sometime, hopefully in the near future.
For sure. Thanks, Sebastian.
Thanks to you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Welcome back. This next interview is with Daniel Hopp, Chief Executive Officer of Hopp Enterprises in Germany. ITC's Associate Public Information Officer Evelyn Setlier talks to Daniel about what small businesses can do to become sustainable.
Hi, I'm Evelyn Setlier. We're here today at the Trade for Sustainable Development Forum. And I had the chance to speak with Daniel Hopp, a CEO of Hopp Enterprises, a family-run sustainable business in Germany. I asked Daniel what it takes to change the mindset of small businesses in going green, and which message is he bringing back home from the event.
The most important thing is how to finance such kind of endeavor. So if you want to become more sustainable, you need to have something that is also a financial incentive. So either by taxes or whatever, but we need something, probably also higher prices. That will also help, especially if you're an intermediary, to be able to sell at a higher price point. This is also, of course, an important incentive. So finally, to make things more sustainable, we need definitely to have these kind of incentives, and this means also financial. Of course, the nice thing is to be back with people, and I think this is very important to always educate yourself, learn something new, and especially in these changing times with the environment, with social problems all around the globe. I think we really need to learn something new, and this is also what I will bring back to my team.
In this final interview, Pamela Coke-Hamilton, Executive Director of the International Trade Centre, wraps up the two-day forum, sharing her key takeaways with Evelyn Setlier.
Welcome back to the Trade for Sustainable Development Forum, and we actually just wrapped up the last session of this year's event. I'm here now with Pamela Coke-Hamilton, the Executive Director of the International Trade Centre. Thank you for joining me here, Pamela.
Thanks so much, Evelyn. It's been great to be here, and it's been a great forum.
So we were wondering if you could maybe share with us, now that the event is over, what are your key messages? What are you taking away from this year's event?
Well, I'd say my key takeaways are two or three things. One, voluntary sustainability standards are important. They're critical for long-term sustainable growth, and it's important for SMEs. Secondly, it can be beneficial to SMEs. In fact, it is beneficial to SMEs when you look at the potential for market entry, the potential for building resilience, particularly in a post-COVID environment, and the ability to access new markets. And then finally, how much collaboration is important. And we really, really are excited about the SLCP, SAI, and ICS and their engagement in ensuring that technical assistance and other measures are important, are provided for them.
Okay, great. Thank you. These are good takeaways. And actually, now that we looked back, let's look forward. So what do you think? What are ITC's next steps in moving sustainable trade forward?
The first thing is recognizing that voluntary sustainability standards are here to stay. And so we have to begin to work with SMEs to give them the capacity to actually adopt these. We also have to work with governments, and I'm really excited too about this smart mix of government due diligence, brands, and also VSS to ensure that we have a coherent narrative that we want to put forward. And then finally, how do we engage the SMEs in a process where they know that this is going to work for them and that voluntary sustainability standards are here to stay.
Thank you very much for sharing this with
you.
us. And we hope to see you next year in 2022 for the next Trade for Sustainable Development Forum. Stay tuned.
Thanks for joining us for this special International Trade Centre episode. Import-Export TV is a proud media partner of International Trade Centre. Make sure to stay tuned to IETV for regular in-depth coverage by the International Trade Centre, celebrating positive global trade across all countries.